Right, today I'm having a discussion with Sarah Berger, having heard about her chilling and horrific encounter with the police and the National Prosecuting Authority earlier on this year in the Eastern Cape. And I recently watched a discussion that Sarah had with John Clark, who's a formidable social worker and a close friend and does great work in the support of whistleblowers. And I felt it very necessary to have her horrific experience, which is essentially a case of gross abuse of power to intimidate her to cease with her investigations into corruption at Fort Hare University and in the Eastern Cape. So without further delay, let's get into it. And I want to welcome this brave and morally courageous lady, Sarah Berger, to the viewers. Hi, Sarah, and thanks for taking this time. To start with, just give us, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Hi, Wayne. Thank you so much. I am an attorney, and forensics found me, so I'm a forensic lawyer as well. I started off in labor law, and I got involved with the University of Fort Hare through my labor law expeditions, and then was later introduced to forensics. The owner of the law firm that I worked for, BCHC, had a forensic company called Horizon Forensics, and I was seconded there for a period of time, and that's how I became involved in forensics. And so I conducted a number of investigations, and I am primarily involved in things like springboarding, fraud and corruption investigations, anti-competitive practices, moonlighting and such. And I'd found my niche, although I'd started off in labor law. That's generally where you find those sorts of investigations stem from.
Sure. And the matters that triggered your horrendous ordeal, it began with your investigations into serious irregularities taking place at the University of Fort Hare in the Eastern Cape. Tell us, how many investigations were you involved in there, and what did you uncover?
Look, the globular number is 62, but there are a lot of branch offs from that investigation string. So 62 is the number that I was involved in with the University of Fort Hare. There were various investigations. What we would be appointed to do was to look into, for instance, one employee that may have been accused of alleged misconduct. And from that employee, you would find that they were connected to another and another and another. And that would involve syndicates that were involved in preparing fraudulent quotes and submitting them to the university to siphon funds out for friends and family. Some employees had sat there for 20 years doing this. Sure. And we would just do an audit for 5 years, and they would have siphoned 14 million rand off. Another was a secretary that sat in administration, earning 15,000 a month, but later discovered she had 6 million rand in her bank account because she was colluding with suppliers. Wow. Other things that I investigated were academic fraud in various forms. One of them was a professor that allegedly sold master's and PhD degrees. And I've drafted several reports. That professor I investigated as well, and he also didn't have the qualifications to even be a professor at the university.
That's right, yeah. So who called you in? Who contracted the services of Horizon Forensics?
Horizon Forensics were appointed by the Vice Chancellor.
Okay. Yeah, carry on.
Oh, no, he came to Cape Town prior to my arrival. I started in 2019, but I've, since done my own discoveries since my arrest. And I found the founding documents from when he came to Cape Town and arranged a meeting begging for assistance from the attorneys at BCHC, and Horizon Forensics, having been connected, and the sister company joined the meeting to see how they could assist.
Okay. So what happened to the people that you exposed for corruption?
Well, we've lodged, I often just suck it at 20, but we're probably way more above 20. From top politicians all the way down to secretaries. Only one arrest has been made since
So
then.
did you have to compile the complaints on behalf of the Vice-Chancellor? Okay.
That's correct, yeah.
And nothing was happening? Nobody was being arrested, other than one, hey?
No one was arrested. In fact, the one that was arrested, I was a witness in the civil trial. They owed the university 1.5 million. When they heard that Horizon Forensics would be a witness in the matter, they offered us 2 million rand to settle, 500,000 more. And that's a matter of public record. The NPA then requested that I be a witness this year in the criminal trial against the Shulas, which I agreed to, and I signed an affidavit in February this year. But of course, I'm unfortunately discredited as a witness now because I myself am a fraud and corruption accused.
Well, let's unpack that a bit. I mean, many won't know that you and Bradley, your colleague, were arrested for fraud and corruption. What do you believe happened here? What was the reason for your arrest?
You know, when I do believe that it is a politically motivated situation. I believe that we were pinned on like a piñata tail at the end of this. I've looked at the docket and there were 16 arrests made. Of those 16, 3 arrests were only authorized on the 28th, which is the very day that we were arrested. And I'm still trying to piece in my mind how it is possible that police flew down in a jet from the Eastern Cape on the same day with the warrant and managed to serve it on us on the very same day that it was issued by the courts. So I'm puzzled by it.
So I smell a rat. I mean, when you start joining the dots, but I want us to go through this a little bit more detail now. I mean, has the university, before we get into that ordeal that you suffered, has the university come forward and confirmed the work that you have done, that it's all above board?
They haven't publicly gone out to do that, and it puzzles me in a great way. And I'll tell you why it puzzles me is because the instructions came from the very executive office at the university. The work that we did there is very, very well known to them. And no one has come out of their ivory towers to say, hey, these people did a stellar job. But to illustrate it, up until today, the 12th of December, I've received an email from the NPA once again requesting support on existing and ongoing investigations at the university, as I've done for 2 other law enforcement agencies for months after I came out of jail. So Bradley and I have continued to support and send investigative information through even conducting full new investigations for the SIU and for the Hawks post our arrest.
Wow. So let's go back. When were you arrested? And tell us what happened. I believe from what I've heard, and I'd like the listeners to get a sense of this gross overbearing sort of waste of taxpayers' money, to find that 20 policemen and the hiring of a private jet to carry out a raid at your offices whilst you and Bradley were in your offices. This is in Cape Town. And then flying you to the Eastern Cape. Walk us through this experience, if you can do that.
It happened on the 28th of March, and it's not a day I can ever forget.
This year, 2024.
Yeah. 2024. The case was open, just to place on record, the case was open in January 2024. And we were arrested in March. Earlier this year, in February, if I can just rewind it to then, I had a visit from the Hawks and the NPA to discuss the Oscar Bambayane matter. And
what is that matter? Just briefly tell us, what is the Oscar Bambayane matter? He's the Premier of the Eastern Cape.
He's the Premier of the Eastern Cape. There's been much confusion in the media about what Horizon's role was in that investigation. And I would like to clarify it. We were never instrumental in having him deregistered from the university. That was a Senate and a university decision. What we were asked to do post facto was to look into his actual degree. And what we found was deep irregularities in the system, and in fact, found an alleged ghostwriting team that was writing draft proposals for politicians. And I say that plural because there is more than one.
Right.
they would then submit that research proposal or options of research proposals to politicians, and they would just sort of go, yes, authorized, that's the one we're going to go with. But the ghostwriters would be filling in all the details all the way up to chapter stage. And then later what we discovered, that most of the work was plagiarized for Mr. Marbiane. And later what his professor, who has also turned out to be a fraud, Professor Ijeoma, sought to do was to register him for a PhD. So not only was he going to get this allegedly fraudulent master's degree, he was going to jump him to a PhD level without having to do much work on his actual proposal, research chapters, or anything.
So you discovered this, and then so take us through this ordeal that I just can't believe it. We'll drop some of the still of the pictures that were taken from your security system at the time, but on that day, 20 policemen swooped into your offices.
Yes, so we're going back to the 28th. I mean, I've said it so many times before, it was such a bizarre situation. I was standing there getting ready, I was drafting some reports. I'd done some sort of on-hand investigations, not desktop, you go and do sort of face-to-face interviews, and I was drafting reports which had serious timelines. And I was sitting at my desk, and at the same time, I was also correcting some things on a criminal complaint that I was drafting on behalf of the university against one of the accused in the same matter that I stand to supposedly alongside some gang or whatever. And I got a phone call from one of the partners at the law firm, a kilometer down the road, and she said, she was in tears, and she said to me, I really need you to come and assist me here. There are some people here visiting Bradley. And I said, oh, just hold on, just give me a moment. There's somebody at my doorbell. And I was still on the cell phone with her, and the next minute, these 6 guys came running up the stairs, led by a constable. And I recognized the constable because she's known to me. And I said, geez, I'm terribly sorry. I have to go. I've got visitors of my own now. And so I put the phone down and I said to this person, gosh, can you please...
So they're entering your home?
Yeah. So they entering into the office, and I said to the person, look, sorry, what are you doing here? What a surprise. And she said, oh, just the person I'm here to see. I'm here to arrest you. And so I said, on what basis? I've done nothing wrong. And she said, let's go and talk inside your office. She pointed to my door and she said, you're a director of this business. I said, yes, I am. She said, well, then I'm going to be placing you under arrest and flying you to the Eastern Cape. To my mind at that stage, I thought I was going to be getting on a Fly Safair flight. And she said to me, you need to remain calm on the flights. And so that was at 10 o'clock in the morning. At 5 o'clock, they were done with the digital evidence. And they eventually, because I'd unpacked all these files, and you'll see that on some of the images, there were about 90 Mantex files with evidence. There was multiple images and so on. And
what did she say they were arresting you for? What were they accusing you of?
They put a one-pager down on the table, and they pointed at it, and it said that I'd been accused of corruption in around 2020. Now, factually, it's bizarre because I'd never even been in Horizon, nor at Bradley. I mean, although he was a director, a silent director, we weren't involved in Horizon at all. Yeah. And so I just saw this, and I mean, my heart sank because I just thought, I just kept on saying to her, I've done nothing wrong. I don't know what you're talking about. Why are you not going after the people that I've investigated where the real evidence is available?
And so somebody signed this warrant. How do you prove? I mean, the level of proof is just missing completely. Somebody in the Eastern Cape must have signed this warrant.
Well, somebody in the Eastern Cape did, and that's something in particular that has raised my alarm bells. And so we have hired a special investigator to look into those signatures of those warrants because they look completely peculiar. Yeah.
So they're in your offices, they're going through all your files, they arrive at 10 o'clock, by 5 o'clock they think they've got what they're looking for, and then what? They march you off to the airport.
No. They had all my home addresses incorrect, and they said that I was then permitted to tell them where I live. And I told them that I lived in 2 places. They took me to the closest. I was allowed to change into 1 fresh change of clothing. I was then taken to the local police station from where my work is, and I was thrown into a cell with 5 or 6 other women and laid there for the evening until around 7 or 7:30. Remember, you've got no concept of time when you're in jail because you don't have a watch on, there's no one that can tell you what time it is. It's darkness.
And you couldn't phone anyone?
Well, I had seen my colleague Bradley there. And while the police was marching me to the cell, I banged and I said, I need to speak to my co-director. And so he was speaking to some people, and we spoke about bringing a potential urgent bail application. But by probably 7 or 7:30 the next morning, we were driven at 160, 180 kilometers per hour to the blue light brigade fashion to the airport and put onto a private jet. We still thought, once again, that it was going to be a local flight, but we were placed on a private jet, handcuffed. I was handcuffed and Bradley was foot shackled.
My goodness. So the private jet took you where?
Took us to Bishu. I mean, it's just such an unbelievable thing because we're officers of the court, and at the day before I hadn't cried. I think I was just in so much shock at that point in time. But when I stood on the runway and they demanded that I be cuffed and Bradley be foot shackled, I completely broke down because I kept on thinking that I'd studied so hard.
Yeah, sorry about this. It must have been incredibly emotional and frustrating to have to go through this. You're trying to do your job. You're doing what you believe is a good job, uncovering corruption for a university, and yet you get treated in this manner. Sure. Okay, now take your time.
It's just so embarrassing. But you're always the person on the other side telling your clients that, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to deal with these things. And then you are your own client, essentially, on the runway, cuffs and shackles. And you are just thinking to yourself, well, I have absolutely no control over this situation. There's nothing I can do. And I'm at these people's mercy.
Yeah. And you have no control. You're absolutely helpless, and nobody can do anything because they have the power with all these trumped up charges, with all these signatures, and you really were not part of the organization at the time when they're accusing you of when things were happening, which we now know is not the case anyway. So then what happened? Did you go straight to the courts, and did they apply for bail and let you go?
No. In fact, both Bradley and I were told by the police that we would be out within the next 2 days. And I mean, my lawyer brain just kicked in and I said, sure, fat chance of that, because it's the long weekend,
So this was before a weekend, huh?
It was before the Easter weekend, on the eve of the Easter.
Okay, so
they knew. Yeah. And so we got jetted off to the Eastern Cape. We arrived there and we had to wait on the runway while several other police people, I don't know what teams they were from, but they were all in civilian clothing taking photos of the jet. And we realized, Bradley and myself spoke about it and we said, this must be a really remarkable thing to have a jet here, because all these people were taking videos in front of it and screaming and laughing while we stood there handcuffed and foot shackled waiting for the games to end. We were then piled into 2 separate cars and told that we would stay at separate locations because there wasn't enough space at the East London jail cell. So Bradley went into the township, into Mdansane. I followed behind. And I think I mentioned it in John Clark's video as well. I know a bit risque, and embarrassing, but I had to relieve myself there, and they all took their turns to ridicule me by opening up the toilet seat and commenting because the toilet wouldn't flush.
Wow.
I was then told, no, it's completely disgusting. I felt completely humiliated. And whilst I wait outside for Bradley's paperwork to be done, to be booked into Mdantsane, we scavenged between the two of ourselves what we had managed to bring from Cape Town. He had a packet of biscuits, which he split in two with me. I had a small bottle of Listerine, which I gave him. He didn't have a toothbrush. And so we shared out what we could amongst each other. And then I was transported to East London, where I laid on a jail cell floor for days. They moved me around from cell to cell. Horrendous conditions, lights not working, toilets not flushing, feces all over the walls, a vile treatment. I begged to speak to my attorney. My attorney came there on the very night, the evening that I'd landed, and begged to speak with me. They said that the General of the Hawks had issued a note that I was not allowed any legal representation. So yeah, my attorney shouted through the bars and he said, Sarah, I'm going to keep trying. And I just said, Henry, can you please just bring me some water? And so they passed the water through the bars, but I was not allowed to consult with him until the eve of my bail hearing, where one policeman permitted me 10 minutes to download all the information to put into my affidavit in support of my bail.
Oh goodness, this is horrendous. Stuff out of the movies. This is gross abuse of human rights, quite frankly. So then you got bail. You applied, and the next day. So now you'd been spent about 3 days in this.
5. I'd already been 5. So on day 6, I went to court. And I was one of 2 people that were permitted unopposed bail. They opposed bail for Bradley and the rest of the people without any reasons. They said to Bradley and everyone in the court that there was a racketeering charge on the charge sheet. And fortunately, a legal representative of another accused stood up and said, I'd like to see this certificate for racketeering, and they couldn't produce it. And so he said, well, my learned friend knows that you need a certificate from the head of the NPA. And he said, well, he's got an email to that effect. He's going to stand down. He said, no, I don't want to see an email. I want to see a certificate. Anyway, those charges were struck off the charge sheet. But once I had received this unopposed bail, I went and stood and waited while my attorney came to me and said, we're going to need to try and post this bail now. But the facilities at this magistrate court do not work. There's no card machines. There's no working ATMs. There's no one that can receive the bail. So the cops then told me, this national political killings task team said, well, you'll have to go to prison. And in that moment, I got the fright of my life. And I was so afraid to go to the prison that I broke out into tears. I'd been stoic the entire, time, probably from nerves, And the prosecutor walked past me and said, Sham, should I rather send you to jail? Why are you only, should I rather send you to prison? Why are you only crying now?
Oh, my goodness.
And, anyway, so they then agreed to place me back into the holding cells in East London. So I had to go back to jail, get my mattress and my blanket, like every other person incarcerated.
Absurd.
And so I sat there on the floor and I waited until late afternoon until my attorney could post my bail and come and get. So I was out there probably before 6 o'clock on the 6th day.
Wow, I'm dumbstruck. So what has happened since then, since your arrest?
Look, people think, okay, well, you're out on bail now. And I think that they imagine that your life just goes on and things are just peachy, but they're not. You're an officer of the court. So people have even higher expectations and standards of you. And as a result of that, you're even more harshly persecuted, when you're faced with these accusations. I've had newspapers, when I read them, when I got out on bail, that accused me of being a murderer. And I just thought to myself, what the heck is this? Another accused me of being part of a mafia. And I just thought to myself, on what basis? I had forensic institutions that just suspended me on the basis that they'd read these media articles and they couldn't be associated with me. Colleagues in the industry that just, they left. We can't be connected to you. We can't be known that you and I are associated in any way. So it's a very, very lonely place.
It has a massive ramifications and tentacles of impact on your entire life. What's the current status of this case against you now?
I've had a chance to study the docket, and I cannot find a shred of evidence against me. I do not know what the allegations are against me. And what is deeply, deeply concerning, and I have to take it back to this recent release of this Amabangane Part 1, Tell No Lies. I watched it with amazement. In fact, John Clark shared the link with me, and I couldn't take my eyes off it for the 50 minutes that it ran.
Yeah.
Is that two key takeaways? I mean, you want to chuckle, but it's actually not funny, is we're the National Postponement Authority. Well, I can tell you now they are, because my case is going to be postponed to the 31st of March, which means that 1 year down the line, despite them saying that their investigation is done, 1 year down the line, we're going to go only for it to be postponed again, because the trial won't run then. It still has to be transferred to the High Court, and that is only if they don't request another postponement. The other key takeaway is that we arrest now and investigate later. And that has become quite apparent in our matter as well.
Absolutely.
So, sorry, hard hitting, but it's a brilliant, brilliant depiction of what we're facing now.
It is, and also just reading earlier on for the 2023-2024 financial year, the South African Police Services recorded over 4,000 incidences of alleged wrongful arrests, averaging about 11 a day. And these claims amount to about 2.2 billion rand. We know they're not all going to end up in settlements, but yours fits into one of these. And by the sounds of this is gross intimidation. This is trumped up stuff. And how does it get to this? I'm trying to think of how much power you have to enable to convince the police and whoever to sign warrants, to hire jets, to get 20 police to come along, and yet knowing you and listening to this ordeal, there's nothing here. This is going to result, as far as I can see, and I hope that is the case, a massive claim from yourselves and Bradley against the state. And for us as taxpayers, this is a gross abuse of power, a waste of taxpayers' money, ruining people's lives. And the question we would ask is, where is the accountability going to find itself on this matter? I mean, this is just insane, quite frankly. I imagine you guys have weighed up the costs. There's been a significant psychological toll on you. This has affected you personally. It just tell us a little bit about that.
For the last 8 months, I haven't. It's such a bizarre thing, and it's such an inopportune time, because I really don't like this feeling that I'm going through. But this week has been particularly difficult for me. I've felt a mixture of anger and tears, and I think it's because I had to spend the weekend drafting my submissions and going through and reliving this and looking at that footage again and thinking, this is so unnecessary. If these people had come and spoken to us and asked us questions, this would never have been the case.
Well, that's what you'd expect to happen. I mean, you expect them to get the facts, hear your side of the story before they go down this road. But this was all pre-planned. This is done to intimidate you. So you're obviously scratching the nerves of people high up who just don't want this to go further. And they were expecting you to just back down. But you've prepared your case now and your submission to take this matter to the courts.
Take it to the courts, and to be honest with you, Wayne, every single party that has had a hand in this, that has ensured that Bradley and myself were arrested before an Easter weekend and inflicted immense harm on our families and immense pain on our businesses, will need to come an account. And we're going to make sure of that, because all of this wasteful expenditure could have been avoided. You did not need to put officers of the court on jets. You did not need to put 20 armed policemen guarding 2 innocent officers of the court. And we have notified the state that we'll be suing them, because one of our businesses is on its knees and the other one is, fortunately for our clients, still surviving.
So as we end up here, Sarah, if the Minister of Police, Mchunu, who I think is somebody who we hope is going to turn the police around, or Shamila Batoy, the head of the NPA, happens to watch this, what would your message be to them as regards the state of law enforcement and the controls within this department?
I would say to each of them individually, because I've had now first-hand experience with the NPA in the Eastern Cape, as well as the political killings task team who are investigating us purportedly. It's time to clean shop. You've got some serious rogues in your team that are not following protocol, that are breaching their own ethics principles as attorneys and as policemen. And if I need to be held to account for whatever reason, then they need to come and be held to account too. So I do hope, every time there's a change in some sort of administration, I pray that it's going to be of positivity and it's going to be of fairness. But what I've seen in this process has just been gross misconduct and gross violations of constitutional and human rights, and no protocol followed. It's a die-hard approach, and it has left me with no faith in the process, to be quite honest.
Well, Sarah, first of all, I must say I'm shocked, and I just apologize on behalf of every South African that you've had to go through this. You and Bradley, your lives have been in turmoil since. And yet, while we're shocked, we're probably not surprised, because in our work at OUTA, we just see so much of these long tentacles of corruption. By the way, the whole higher education department under Blatant Zamande occupies a lot of our investigators' times, and the SETAs, higher education and so forth, the universities and the Fort Hare University, an area where you've been working. And I can see, when you join the dots of what's going on here, I can see what's behind the scenes. I hope it comes to fruition sooner rather than later. I hope you get the just and deserved outcomes that you seek. You can never undo the damage, though, and the pain and suffering. But look, we'll be watching this. Keep us in touch. Good luck with your case, and hopefully, this video can trigger some action by the authorities, fast track this so we can get to the bottom of it. And the main thing is to hold people to account. And hopefully that has happened as well. Thank you, Sarah, for your time. You are a very morally courageous person, I must say. And we are in awe of people like yourselves. Thank you for your time.